pulling together material about how to work with children and using emojis as kind of a tool to engage them and getting them to understand feelings and to feel more focused as well as feel safer about what they're experiencing in their lives. So I'm looking forward to that part. And we're also going to spend a few minutes talking about some emails that came in. It seems to be becoming a rather exciting part of the program with some of the emails, especially the ones that come in and they're like 180 degrees apart from each other, and both of them trying to explain situations as if they are factually driven material, which is interesting because as I do a little bit of research on what they're saying, neither one of them appear to be factual. But people have opinions, and I think that's probably the healthiest part of what we're experiencing, is that people are now feeling like they have a voice that in the past perhaps they didn't understand that they actually did have. So I'm really happy that we're getting the responses we're getting in. The telephone situation is still the telephone situation. It'll be up and running sometime, and more than that I'm not exactly sure where to go with that. Sometime is such a nice word. It tends to offer a lot but delivers very little, and as much as I understand that, we're continuing with emails. So when you have questions or concerns or you want to express opinions, feel free to just send them in to me. The easiest way to do that is by using my email address as opposed to smoke signals. The email address is docmarty, DOCMARTY, 61 at gmail.com. It's docmarty61 at gmail.com. And I do read them, I do respond to them. Most of them, unfortunately, don't get on the air because I don't have the time to respond to all of them. However, sometimes when the response is pretty low, every single one of them gets on the air, which is kind of an interesting experience to go through. A couple of them that came in just recently was I had mentioned in our last program that I'm going to be doing a community service streaming broadcast this coming Saturday, and we've changed the time to 10 o'clock. It was originally, we were talking about 9, but we have a scheduling conflict at 9. So we're going to do it at 10 o'clock this coming Saturday morning. And what we're going to do is a teaching program that will allow anybody to be able to do progressive muscle relaxation, either for yourself or to help other people that you know, because we have now got scientific evidence that has come out of a big study that was done in Wuhan, China, back in January and February by psychologists over there, that have actually shown that when people can practice progressive muscle relaxation, it lowers down the likelihood of the immune system being compromised by viruses. And not only does it do that, but it also releases down anxiety and it allows people to sleep better, both of which are very instrumental in maintaining a healthy immune system. So we're going to do that because progressive muscle relaxation has been around for a long time. I think 1938 was the original date that a psychologist actually discovered that when you can breathe deeply and allow your muscles to relax, that you do sleep better and worry and fear and anxiety tends to go down. So we're going to teach people how to do that, and we're going to spend an hour doing it. The actual process takes about 20 minutes, but I want to be able to explain it so people understand it. And then we'll also take some emails in response to that if people need more than that. And in addition to the streaming that we're going to be doing, it's also going to go out over the podcasting that we now have, thanks to John, like 7 different major platforms that are putting it out, including iTunes and Spotify and Google. So you'll be able to pick it up there and be able to look at it over and over again if you'd like to do that. And we'll also take a look at replaying the streaming program that we do off of KAIR, which is how we are being heard by you. No, you're hearing me from there right now because we're going out live through KAIR, the wonderful station in downtown Humble. So the program itself is designed to promote mental wellness, and in doing so, the hope is that people will pick up some tools and learn a little bit more effectively about how to manage their lives and help the lives of the people around them better, to become more focused on things that they need to be focused, to be able to stay in the present, since we already know that lapsing into bad memories of things that were are not real effective ways of managing the way things are now. We also know that jumping into the future to project out more bad is usually not a good course of action to take. So what we want to be able to do is help people how to understand who they are in relationship to what they're experiencing today, and to give them some hope for how to manage their lives better. And then if they need to take care of the things from the past that continue to get in the way, there's ways of getting that done that are not that costly, and they tend to be very effective ways of getting things done so that we can let go from the past and move into the future. A big part of what we have talked about in the past is how belief systems tend to get in the way of our own reality, because we think that because we have a belief, therefore it's a valid understanding of what we're experiencing. And we know that from childhood experiences, a lot of the beliefs we take on are not valid. They're simply messages that came from parents in their own state of understanding or confusion about how life is, and as little children we adopt them as being ours. So what we want to be able to do is enlighten people to understanding we can take on new beliefs that are reflective of where we are today, so we start living lives that are present orientated instead of from the past. So we're going to be able to touch on some of that as well. And let me get to the two opposite emails that came in the mail. One of them was addressed from somebody in England who wanted to know why it is that in the States we're not using more hypnosis as a way of teaching people how to relax and stay calm, because apparently they have embraced that as a way of enhancing the kind of meditation work that they do over there. And to answer that, it is something we're working on. We're discovering that clinical hypnosis can be very effective, as the folks in England have already discovered and already put into practice when it comes to dealing with anesthesia and pain control and releasing habits. And we are also moving in that direction a little bit slower because there's a lot of oppositional forces to what we do over here that I'm not going to go into at the moment. But what we are trying to do is to bring in a much more aware state of mind to get rid of the negative beliefs that a lot of people walk around with, assuming those beliefs are factual. And what we discover is when you open the mind into the subconscious part of the mind, we allow people to have their own expression of being creative, to open up their own imaginations, and even more importantly, to have possession of their intuition, so they can start trusting it, understanding it, and moving forward with it, rather than self-doubting and having to take surveys every time they're presented with a question, like on your pizza, because we have to have people who can actually think, but not just respond, but to actually have the ability to think well. So that's a part of what we want to be able to focus on, is how people can actually do that. So to answer the question, we're moving in the direction it needs to go. There is some resistance to it, but a lot of the resistance is finally starting to melt away as people become a little bit more aware of what it is, as well as what it's not, because hypnosis is not mind control, it's not brainwashing. Those false proof fallacies were established back in the early 1920s. Mostly as a result of Dr. Svengali and the silent movies that came out showing this sinister character putting people under his spell, which is not at all what hypnosis is about. That's mind control. The Jim Jones mentality of getting people to drink the Kool-Aid is not hypnosis, that's mind control. The issue of putting your will into somebody else's mind is a way of brainwashing them. Clinical hypnosis is about bringing people's own consciousness to a state of usability, as opposed to the person doing it. So they're diametrically opposed to each other and not the same. The other email that came in is that why you're trying to influence people's brains by giving them false case scenarios of what's not real. And I'm questioning exactly what that's supposed to mean, other than the fact that a lot of people are very upset when they think they have a knowledge base that they believe to be truthful, and in spite of what they believe to be truthful, they're being presented with information that's totally contradictory to it. And how do you reconcile that? It's very difficult for people who are raised to believe a certain thing to be confronted by something that is totally different from it, and being told that perhaps your belief system is not accurate. And typically what happens is that people just rebel against that whole concept, that you can't possibly tell me what to do, you're infringing on my rights, you're doing this and you're doing that, and it gets carried away to a point of total isolation and non-usefulness, which is unfortunately where a lot of the false proof stuff starts coming from. It's people's fear, because what's happening is that we're experiencing something that nobody has prepared us to deal with. I dare say none of us were really around when the pandemic from 1917-18 was existing, and those that were probably aren't talking about it a whole lot anymore because they're well over 100 years old now. The dilemma we're running into is that we don't understand what we're experiencing, and in that lack of understanding we tend to lapse back into old thoughts and old behaviors rather than opening up and seeing what else is possible. So I don't know how well that answers the questions that have come in, but what we're trying to do is to open people up to starting to rely on inner knowledge, inner strength, of self-care things, and being more compassionate towards themselves as well as to others, so that we can all get through this thing together, because at some point we are going to get through this together, and then we're going to have to figure out a way to rebuild everything. But for right now, we're going to manage ourselves. So let me stop. We're going to take a break. When we come back from the break, we're going to introduce Shannon, as well as to give you our contact information so that you can send in your comments and find out more information about what it is we're doing, as well as what it is that Shannon's doing. So we will be back with you in just a moment. Welcome back. This is Doc Marty with Mental Wellness, and we are moving on with our program. I told you before we took our break that I would be giving you our contact information, which I'm going to do right now, so feel free to take out your pens and your pads or your tablets and put the information in so you can reach out to us. We love getting the correspondence. It's absolutely part of the reward that we get, knowing that there's folks out there listening and actually taking the time to contact us. So again, the email address is docmarty61@gmail.com. It's DOCMARTY61@gmail. The other way you can reach out is by phone. We actually still do telephones, and we answer them mostly, or they go to voicemail and then we call them back. But the phone number here, well, not here, but the phone up to my office is 281-812-3322. 281-812-3322. Almost sounds like a rhyme. The other way is through our website, which has tons of information about the kinds of programs that we put on, the kinds of therapy work that we do. It's got some biographical information. It's also got a list of workshops and training things that I tend to run, and information again about reaching out to us if that's something you would like to do. The address of the email, URL for the website is www.allied, mental, mental, health, Texas.com. It's alliedmentalhealthtx.com. And I encourage you to take a look and see what's there. So, with all that in mind, I'm going to introduce Shannon, who is an intern, and she is working with me. She comes with an enormous amount of experience in the banking world. She's finished her master's degree in counseling, seems like forever ago, and is now working on becoming a professional counselor. And in addition to that, she's also certified as a clinical hypnotist and does some wonderful stuff with kids and families and young adults. So Shannon's working on an ebook which deals with emojis and how children can benefit from learning how to express them and to use them in a very effective way for dealing with their reality of what they're going through right now. So I'm going to introduce Shannon, and welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Doc, for having me. I've been under a rock for the past few months, so I literally almost walked out of the house with my slippers on today. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually embracing the world today. I need to not do that.
Yes.
So it's been kind of interesting trying to get myself out of this quarantine mentality and into life again. So thanks for bringing me out today.
You're welcome.
And you're right, it's actually been really fun. I do a lot of great work with children and teens. I love that population. I love to keep it real with the kids, as we say in the office, because the more that they can express themselves, the better. And any therapist out there knows that it's already challenging enough as it is to deal with a younger population in terms of providing therapy services, because keeping their engagement alive is just a skill in itself. It's an art form, basically. And much less with the coronavirus pandemic and moving everything to telehealth and video sessions sets yourself up for even more of a challenging experience. And you have to learn how to be creative with that. So I work with children ages 8 and older. I work with a huge population of teenagers and even young adults. And this particular population, they understand the use of emojis. And emojis are a way that you can express yourself through what we call an emoticon. And it's through the keyboard on a smart device. So whether it's an iPad or an iPhone, even Android devices, in the keyboard function, there's an option for you to switch over from an actual keyboard, and then you can pop up and see all these little smiley faces and rainbows and tacos, little devil faces. There's just so many different options that you can choose on the emoji screen that you can leverage. And so during the telehealth therapy, that's how we've been teaching children how to learn. And when I say children, I'm also referring to adolescents, teaching them to learn how to embrace their emotions, to understand them, to know what they are. So how that works is we'll obviously talk through our session, and then I'll ask them, show me an emoji of what that means to you. And they might pick some random emoji on their keyboard, and that's totally fine. But it gives them an opportunity to share a story. behind why they chose that emoji, what it is that they're feeling. And so I actually have a 3-step process when I'm working with children, teaching them about their emotions, because kids need to understand their emotions. They need to learn how to make sense of what it is that they're feeling inside. Sometimes if they're feeling angry inside, they might be acting out to their other siblings or to their parents in a very rebellious fashion. And it's because they simply they can't make sense of their inner world. And so teaching them about their emotions really brings that out of them. And it helps them to better emotionally regulate and understand what it is that they're feeling so they can articulate it and then eventually learn how to use assertive boundaries and set personal boundaries for themselves when they're feeling a certain way.
Okay. So give me an example of how parents would be able to sit down with a kid and actually use the emojis for that child.
So there's several different ways. You can pull out your iPad. First of all, the parent has to understand what the 5 basic emotions are, and that's something that we can actually teach them today. In fact, I can tell you right now, it's joy, fear, sadness, disgust, and anger. Okay? Again, that's joy, fear, sadness, disgust, and anger. So the parents can write down those particular 5 basic emotions. And then they can ask the child to pull up an iPad or their iPhone and just scroll through their emoji keyboard and pick the one that expresses joy, for example. So which emojis would they use on their keypad that expresses joy for them?
Okay.
And so the parent can actually sit down with the child and prompt the child, show me anger, or if the child, let's say that the child's really moody that day, the parent can sit down and say, hey, I'm kind of sensing here that, maybe you're a little frustrated today. Let's pull out our emojis and take a look here. What are you thinking that you're feeling right now, or how are you feeling emotionally after you've taught them the 5 basic emotions?
Okay, so they show you the emoji, and then the parent asks them how they're feeling. Are they like, why are you feeling that way, or are they just wanting the feeling to come up?
Just allowing them to express the feeling.
Okay.
So it's been my experience that any time, especially initially when you're asking somebody, well, why are you feeling that way? It automatically brings up the defenses. Mm-hmm. So the important part here is to allow the child to express themselves. So if they're saying, Mom or Dad, I'm feeling angry today. You don't want to ask them, why are you feeling angry? It's, okay, well, tell me a little bit more about that. What's causing the anger here? What happened? I'm curious to know what happened. And just allowing them to freely express themselves, giving them that opportunity to let it out to the parent and establish a trust factor with each other as well.
Okay. A lot of times parents want to get into the rescuing thing with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So a child says, I'm angry. The parent says, well, tell me more about why. And the child will then go through this thing about being trapped, about being hemmed in, about not interacting with their friends, about missing school. Maybe not missing school, but missing the social part of school. And where's the parent go with that part then?
So there's definitely a balance, right? Because we have to keep in mind too that parents, we have our own unconscious bias, we have our own preconceived notions about the way things should be, and sometimes that's more harmful than just opening up and allowing the child to express themselves. So I would just encourage the parent to just sit back for a minute and to just listen to what they're really saying. Allow the child an opportunity to say what it is that's on their mind. And then I would seek, counseling from a therapist or somebody that can then dig in a little bit further if you're finding that there's an emotional regulation issue for sure. Okay. It's not really something that a parent, because you have to understand a parent has a different role. A parent needs to be a parent, but a parent can't be their therapist, right? You can't blend those roles. I have 4 kids at home, and I can't blend that role either. If my kids are having an issue, I send them to a therapist. It's a sign of good health. It's a sign of allowing them an opportunity to have that safe environment where they might express something with the therapist that they might not share with the parent. Kids are designed that way.
Okay, so when the kids are sharing this stuff, the parents are listening, hopefully being encouraging and supportive. Where do the parents go for their stuff?
It'd be the same thing.
Emojis?
No, sorry, let me clarify. So the parents, if they're finding within themselves that there's this inner challenge, right? If they're sensing that, maybe they've got some anger that they haven't dealt with, or maybe they have some trauma that they haven't dealt with, that they're projecting out or bottling up inside, whatever, it's really important for the parents to go ahead and seek counseling as well, to find a therapist that they feel that they can connect with and just really talk about those things.
Okay.
You can't hold that inside.
True. Okay. So we're going to take a break. Time flies so quickly.
Yeah,
when we
it
do
does.
this. When we come back, a couple of other questions I wanted to ask you, especially about extended families, about kids missing grandparents and missing cousins, people that they would be interacting with if this thing were not actually happening, and how to fill in that gap. So we're socializing with kids and they're getting what they need from the extended family part too. And also, the other question that I keep running into is, where do parents go with their frustration when they don't know that they can get counseling help and they start to over-rely on other ways of dealing with life?
Okay.
Okay, so let's take the break and we'll be back in just a few moments.
Okay.
This is Doc Marty welcoming you back to our program on mental wellness. Shannon Mosher is with us, and we're talking about emojis and families being confined and trying to manage life. I just got this weird email came through. First one of the day. Somebody's looking for their lost dog, Sadie. Normally we don't do this kind of stuff, but you know, when people are attached to animals, this is part of what we're dealing with too, especially with kids, and trying to understand that those animals are as much of the family as other people that are human. I said that wrong. All people are human. The animals take on human qualities sometimes. So to the gal that's looking for Sadie who's lost, I sincerely hope you find Sadie, or if Sadie finds you back, because it's important, especially to kids. Or if you're by yourself, those animals can be a lifeline to your sense of being connected. So yeah, it struck me as being kind of strange that somebody would be calling in about Sadie, but there's relevancy to all this stuff because it all is part of how we feel about what we're going through right now. So let's get back to what we're talking about with the emojis. It's a fascinating subject. And the concern about extended families came up from a client that I'm working with over the internet, which is how I'm seeing most of my clients right now as a Shannon. Simply because, you know, the contact issue is something we have to be very mindful of. And in that conversation, what came up was the two adolescent kids that typically tend to see themselves as being very independent and wanting not a whole lot to do with family, like when family get-togethers and, you know, that kind of stuff. But what they're complaining about now is they haven't seen grandma in 8 weeks. They haven't talked to Uncle Fred. And Uncle Fred apparently is a big support base to a couple of adolescent boys that I see. And it's fascinating how in this time of being shut in, we start to miss the things that we tend to see kids taking for granted sometimes or not being a part of, and yet we know from the way they respond when they're not available to us that it still plays a role in their lives. So it's one of the questions that came up is, how do we deal with the loss of extended family?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and it's very relevant, whether you're dealing with a pandemic or just sometimes in life in general, especially if you have, you know, parents who maybe work 2 or 3 jobs to support the family, and you know, the kids are reliant on that human connection, right, to extended family members. So it is important that everyone has an opportunity to connect with each other. One of the things that I've encouraged a lot of my patients to do is to set a goal for the day or for the week. Set a goal to touch base with one of those extended relatives for the week. Help them to find the avenue that's going to be the best for them in order to connect. And what I mean by that is there's Google Hangouts, there's FaceTime, there's all sorts of different social media channels. You can even use like Facebook Messenger to do video calls. Find the one that both of you have and try to connect through video on that service base. And what's really interesting is sometimes, especially with teenagers, they don't open up a lot. Even sometimes with extended family members, they can shut down really easily. And so that can pose a challenge because they might find that it's pointless to get on the video or they don't want to. But I bet you anything, if that extended family member said, show me one of your TikTok videos, or let's do a Taki challenge and eat Takis together, they will be up for that in a heartbeat. So you have to really know what the kids are interested in, and you have to, you're not luring them in, but you kind of are dangling a carrot in a way, and you're saying, you know what, let's connect, show me into your world, show me your artwork, What music are you listening to these days? What's the cool song out there? Show me your TikTok. There's so many different things. A lot of kids are playing Roblox. There's an opportunity for them to do a screenshot on their phone and show their Roblox character. Animal Crossing is another really big game that has had a lot of hype on that. And so the kids can show them, this is what my character looks like. This is what I'm doing. And just allowing a little peek behind the curtain into their world and doing it in a fun way.
That's very effective stuff. The other thing that I've started doing with some of the parents that I'm working with is setting up a time that they just identify as family history time. One of the things I've discovered is that kids, and this goes right up through young adults, are often very curious about their lineage, their heritage, and where all that stuff comes from. And what a better time to pull out family photo albums and slide projectors of things that the parents grew up with, that the kids either, because they don't seem to be all that interested in it, because they've got activities and other contacts and things they'd rather be doing outside of the home, they're a captive audience right now. And if that curiosity factor is there, one of the things that I was able to do with a gal who actually works for a museum, historical museum, is that she pulled out her family tree. And it's on 4 connected poster boards. This thing is just an enormous thing that goes back pre-Civil War, actually goes all the way back to the Revolutionary War. And it's got these streams, these tentacles of family that go out all over the place. And she sat down with her kids and started going through the histories. They're like annotated histories that come out of family Bibles, they come out of newspaper clippings that have been stored away and scotch taped and now pasted onto pages and pages of information. And it's absolutely, it's an amazing kind of experience. It doesn't require anything online, although you can go online and get some background stuff by doing ancestor.com and outlets like that. But just to sit down with the kids and give them that information.
Yeah.
But at the same time, recognize there's a boredom factor and it can seep in there too, so you don't want to overstress that part.
And also the kids too, sometimes they don't like to see pictures of themselves when they're babies because that's like too embarrassing, right? And so I've actually had some parents call that out before. And so one of the things that they're doing is maybe they have tickets to a rodeo show or some venue that they went to, and they're creating a scrapbook together.
Oh, that can be a lot
of new, fresh things that they've done together. It's very meaningful for the parents as well.
Yeah. I went through this with one of my grandkids, where we were actually sitting and going through the scrapbook that I had put together when I was a kid, and we're looking at ticket stubs to the 1968 World Series when the Detroit Tigers played the St. Louis Cardinals. It was a fascinating thing for me because I was a kid at the time, and it was like, my goodness, this is something. And he was looking at it like, wow, you actually did that. And I said, yeah, this was like post-caveman date, there was baseball, there was World Series, and it was just kind of a way of bringing him into my world, and he was curious, so it became kind of an interesting exchange, and it becomes a fun experience for us.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take another break. It's just amazing that we're going through as quickly as we are. When we come back, we're actually going to be talking about some specific strategies that we can kind of share with folks about managing their own stress and keeping them relaxed. Mostly geared toward the parents to help the kids, because kids learn by example. So if they can see parents meditating or being quiet, being mindful of what's going on in the immediate situation, that can have a profound effect on helping kids get through their struggles as well.
Absolutely.
So we'll take a break, and then when we come back, we will add a few tools to the tool belt for folks to hold on to. This is Doc Marty, and we'll be back in a moment. This is Doc Marty with Mental Wellness, and we are just having a good time sharing information about how we can be helpful, both for the parents and for kids, getting them through the experience of being enclosed and to some degree shut in. So as the air starts getting fresher, hopefully we can start actually getting people outside and doing things like riding bicycles and doing things that you don't have to have social contact with, but you can get outside and enjoy being outside. Part of what we also want to talk about is a little bit of structure in terms of how we pull off the emoji stuff with the kids, and Shannon's going to explain that, and then we're going to throw in some specific tools hopefully we can leave you with, and we will come up to the end of our program for today. So let's see if we can focus on some structure.
Yeah, so the process that I use with the children and the teenagers, if they're into the emoji thing, which most of them are, is the first thing that I do is work on those 5 basic emotions, the ones that I pointed out earlier in the discussion today. And once the kids have a really good grasp on understanding those emotions and awareness of the emotion, then the next thing that we do on a follow-up session is we talk about any examples that they could give of where they were able to pull out an emoji maybe with a parent or for themselves when they were experiencing something. And so the second part of the process, I like to help the children with using their 5 senses. So for example, I will ask them to be mindful in the moment, in the present moment, whether they're experiencing joy or whether they're experiencing sadness. And I'll ask them to use their 5 senses now. And so I'll ask the children, what are your 5 senses? And so then they'll say the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the ears, the touch, right? They've learned that from songs in school and everything. So it gets really fun at that point because they're going to show me their knowledge about what their 5 senses are. And the whole point of that is being mindful in the present moment. It also helps the children to ground themselves to be in the present moment with their emotions. So they're not too hyper-focused on what could happen in the future or what happened in the past. They're focusing on the present moment by using their 5 senses. And so there's more work to be done. That's just very scratching the surface, high-level information. And then the next phase of the session that I use is what we call I statements. Sometimes we do a really bad job of, maybe telling the other sibling, you're being mean, or you're doing this, you're doing that. So what we do is we learn how to teach I statements within a framework. I feel angry because whatever that reason is. When you do this, and they fill in the blank. What I want or what I need you to stop doing is. So I'm teaching them how to effectively set boundaries. So instead of coming out in anger and lashing out in anger, they can take a step back, emotionally regulate, use what they've already learned, and then develop their I statement. And it's really effective.
Good. I love the idea. We're going to have you back so we can actually role play some of this stuff.
Okay.
Fascinating for people to actually listen to how it actually happens, because when it's done right, it is amazingly effective.
It is.
Because the kids learn how to express themselves effectively and how to bring about change rather than just complaining or yelling or getting into conflict.
And they're in control. Let's face it, there's a lot of things that are out of control right now. It seems that way, and it is. So it gives the kids and the parents a sense of control.
Yeah, which is so important right now. Inner control tends to be a critical factor for all of us because there's so much external pressure towards doing things that we just don't normally understand that we have to do, like wearing masks and standing 6 feet apart.
Can't go to the playground. You can't touch it.
Being unable to do things that normally we would do and just take for granted we should all be able to do. And then we have to balance that off with where's the social good, where's the health needs coming in. And that balancing stuff is normally not something we are consciously aware of. So everything's becoming more conscious and at the same time more conflicted.
Sure.
So we're looking for answers. Unfortunately, there's a lot of conflicted answers. So understanding what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong, all that stuff has to be sorted through. And the easiest way to sort through that external stuff is by relying on the internal stuff.
And you don't know what you don't know. That's why it's so important to come in and to see a therapist and to talk about those things and understand a framework that you have so you can have that sense of control.
Absolutely. So we are going to wrap up our program for the day. There is a message that I thought was fascinating. I used this before. It comes from Devin Hastings, who's a dear friend of mine up in Minnesota. And I know up there they're struggling with a lot of stuff similar to what we're struggling with here, as well as all over the rest of the world. But the message about dealing with emotions, his message to me, and actually he's put it out to everybody, is that as you are better managing your emotions, both consciously and unconsciously, your body changes for the better. And it's a simple message, and yet it is so true that we need to be aware of what we're experiencing, and that includes our feelings.
You need to be aware, and when nothing is certain, anything is possible.
Exactly. So, Shannon, I appreciate you spending time with us.
Thanks for having me.
Look forward to your emails, and we will see you next time with more mental wellness. So for that, we're signing off. Good day.